Welcome to OState Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad that you decided to tune in. Hey, fans, we have a very, very, very special guest. For those of people like me, that I'm 51 years old, that grew up in the 80s, and then late 70s, and the 90s, we have royalty on the show today. That is no kidding. Tom Holliday joins OState Daily. Tom, I cannot thank you enough. Second time you come in, it's so kind of you.
You got it, buddy. No problem.
Hey, I know last time we did this, we dove back in, but let's kind of dive back into it. You came to Oklahoma State, 1977. You showed up and you're like, is this really the baseball field right here, right? You realized you had a lot of work to do. You, your brother, Dave Holliday, who's in the pro scouting side with the Phillies right now. He's in the upper Northwest, I think you said. And Gary, so take us back to those times.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was really kind of a shock. When we pulled up, we didn't really know where to go. Coach wasn't here yet. So we drove around. We found a big pile of dirt, and we went to a payphone, and we called him and said, Coach, what's going on here? Where's the field? And he said, I told you, it's right down the street from the basketball arena. Well, all we see is a big pile of dirt with weeds that are bigger than me. And he started laughing. He said, well, start pulling the weeds and get that dirt spread out. We got to practice in a week. And we were like, are you kidding me? So we got a good night's sleep. We went out and we did see it, that it was a field. And I mean, for the next 4 days, we got so sunburnt and dried out and agitated and bit by every bug that we never heard of. And we got it ready. When he pulled into town, he was like, well, now let's get it ready. And we thought it was ready. So that was the start of something. And I think maybe being as irritated as we were about what we had was a good driving thing, because we just started working towards trying to get something better. And we did. We eventually did.
Yeah. You came to Oklahoma State from Miami, where you're an assistant there under Gus Frazier, grew up in Pennsylvania. So talk about how you actually got the job here.
Well, when I left Miami, I signed with the Pirates, and then I played a year with the Pirates. The second year, they offered me a coaching player contract, which I didn't understand, and kind of decided in a short period of time that I really didn't want to do that. And then we found out Josh was going to be a real thing. So 9 months later, we're going to have a little one. So I decided to get a job and instead of playing some more. And I kind of lucked out, Casey. Miami had a coaching job open at mid-year. Ron Polk left Miami and went to Georgia Southern. So Frazier wanted me back as a hitting coach, so I went. And I really enjoyed it. And then the next year I got a job at Arizona State, which Coach Ward got for me. So, I was starting to build a resume when Coach called and said that, he was going to get into college coaching and wanted me to go with him. So I said, sure, where are we going? And he didn't know yet. And he called me 2 or 3 weeks later and gave me his options. And I said, well, the best option on that list was, University of California. And he's like, what about this Oklahoma State thing? And I said, Coach, I don't even know where Oklahoma is. And so he did, because that's where he was from. So he won out on that one. And we sure had our work cut out for us. But it was the greatest move in my life.
Talk about the secret sauce, man. Some of those early teams, you guys got after it right away, and you made noise almost immediately when you got to Stillwater.
Well, our first couple teams, they were really hodgepodge. We actually took a kid. It just pops into my mind. I don't even know why, but we took a kid that was from my wife's hometown in Prescott. There was just barely a good high school player, but he could really run. And we took him because we needed some speed. And, the roster thing, we didn't have to worry about it. We couldn't find 30 players.
Sure.
So, we brought him in, and he was like our sixth outfielder, but he gave us a pinch runner. I mean, we just took players from literally anywhere and everywhere because Oklahoma State had fallen into the gutter. No kid in Oklahoma wanted to come here. And OU was on a roll. I mean, they'd been to the World Series 3 years in a row, and they were good. And so we just went out and got it. Brought a lot of those JUCO kids with Coach. We scored on some other JUCOs. We kept a handful of kids that were on the team. They were pretty good players, but we had our work cut out for us. And honestly, we just got better every year to the point where we finally got a recruiting class, which is that class that Pete and Cavilla was in, because those guys, that's when it started. That's when it became a regularity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people don't realize, too, though. I mean, the 80s were 40 years ago, right? And so the climate in college baseball today is way different. Like, you bring in Utah Tech out of Utah, who's barely Division I, right? And they're throwing like 95 arm after 95 arm. Plus, you have the Supers. So, hey, let's move on to this year's team. It's been a really fun year to watch. Of course, Brian Holliday, I know it's dear to your heart. You have that Chatham Anglers shirt on. You got to coach him in the Cape. So just kind of dive in a little bit to this year's team.
Well, honestly, I think it's the best job Josh has ever done. The early season injuries probably would have destroyed most teams. And, you know, when you're in an arena now that the SEC has created, it's kind of seriously dangerous, because every school in the conference is singing the same song. They're literally telling kids to come, we'll pay you. Mm-hmm. And they're kids. Kids are kids, you know, and some families don't have any money. And so your depth of your ball club is really in question. And right off the bat, you know, you lose Miola, and then you lose Wolford, you lose Schubert. I mean, you name it. I mean, they were gone. And your catcher gets hurt in the third or fourth game of the year, the guy that wins the catching job. Then your backup catcher's got a sore arm from probably just from being overworked early. But he's got to catch because he's the backup. And then you got a freshman catcher who was going to be redshirted. Now he's the backup, and he ended up starting 18 games this year. So they had a chance to really, really fall apart and have an average to a below average season. And the way Josh broke in the freshman kids, Richie and Ortiz, those are good players, but they weren't really ready to jump out there and hit in the 2 and 5 hole, but they were for a while. And now to get them all healthy and get them all playing good, the pitching has been good all season long. Different guys have come and gone in different roles, but basically the arms are all there, and Rob's done a really good job of bringing a rotation together right at the right time of the year. And honestly, I've spent more time the last 2 or 3 weeks watching other teams around the country just to see who is out there that's better than we are. And I don't know who that is. I haven't seen that team yet. And I watched Tennessee 2 or 3 times. They're good. They're not great. They're good. But they're the number 1 team in the country. So honestly, I've got a great feeling.
I think this was the best job. Of course, Rob's done some just knockdown, drag-out, awesome jobs since he's been back at Oklahoma State. But to take all the transfers, Brian Holliday, Sam Garcia, who, by the way, Sam Garcia, he came from High Point. You're talking about Tommy Molsky, who came from Penn State, and then, Robert Crayons, who came from Wichita State, which Wichita State's not the Wichita State that we remember, right? They're not terrible or anything, but they're definitely not that. So it's not like they went and got transfers from like Mississippi State as far as pitching goes and LSU and stuff like that and just plugged them in. So he's taken a bunch of transfers, then a bunch of guys that were just getting their feet wet. He turned them into the best pitching staff in the Big 12. You can't say enough about the job Rob Walton has done.
Well, I'll tell you this, what it tells you is you don't have to come from a SEC school to be able to play. And Brian Holliday's a junior college kid out of Florida, that quite frankly, a lot of people didn't even know anything about him. And, I took him to the Cape 2 summers, and he would have been here a year earlier if we'd have had the mechanics to get him eligible. And I say that because he had a weird COVID experience that kept him from being able to go to a Division I. And then you look at like picking Sam Garcia out of a portal film, out of watching him on film. Whoever did that should get a real good raise at the end of the year, because that, he didn't even have a great record at High Point. And Tommy Molsky was pitching for me in the Cape, and Tommy's a good pitcher, but at Penn State there wasn't any expectation. So
right.
Coming to Oklahoma State to where there is expectation, that was a good challenge for Tommy, and he's been a good add-on. And there's some really good arms in the program. Gabe Davis and Yuri. I mean, there's kids here that are very, very comparable to the best arms in the SEC. There's honestly, across the board, I could go. I don't know that there's a hitter in the SEC better than Binge.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a home run guy better in the country than Schubert. I mean, the entire country. And this is a year of the home run. There's a lot of guys sitting out there with 25 to 30 dingers. If Schubert doesn't get hurt and miss a month, he'd hit 30 home runs. So, comparable, they're there. The conference tournament probably was as many times as you go there and you say, this tournament means nothing. Well, I think it meant something to that group, because it's the first time this year they went on just won something that was sitting in front of them. And they took it away from OU, who was on their roll. And, to beat them 4 out of 5 times, and some people thought they were the best team in the conference, it tells you that this team is healthy. And when they're healthy, they can beat anybody. And you know what? You only got to do that for 3 more weeks. So, sky's the limit.
It absolutely is. And, to take all these transfers like a Brian Holliday, your shortstop Lane Forsythe, who, by the way, has become one of my favorite players I just love watching that guy play baseball. He doesn't make errors. He bunts. He hits behind runners on hit and run. He does cartwheels. He does whatever he has to do to help the team, right? I love watching that guy play. A bunch of tough guys, but you had to kind of bring them all together, and then you had to do it in the face of early adversity. So that culture, I use the term a lot, culture, that Josh and Rob and Victor and Mark, that they have created at Oklahoma State. It's such a great culture that it brought them together really fast in the face of adversity and made them want to play for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and it's like anything else. There's been some turnover in the coaching staff. The constants have stayed there, and Mark Ginter comes in. That's a good add-on. He's a former Cowboy. And I think that theme with Josh to try to have guys that have played here work here is really, really, really wise. And, he and Rob have been the constants, and the players know that. Hey, sometimes it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. Just to know that you got 2 people there that are rock solid. It's a good thing. I mean, there's a lot of programs that kids are saying, I've had a different pitching coach 3 years in a row, and that happens because the money is out there. So some of these big programs, if they don't win, they just dump somebody.
Yeah.
They blame it on somebody else. So somebody's out on the street that probably had nothing to do with the failure. But that's the new piece to this culture you're talking about. College baseball's changed. It's very professionally run. I'm not saying that's good either.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's changed.
It has. Put on your dad hat a little bit here, and, hey, Josh, of course, grew up in the program while you were coaching there, both as an assistant and a head coach, both him and Matt. They grew up running around Alley P. Reynolds Stadium, idolizing Pete Incavilla, Robin Matura, that kind of thing. So he gets this dream job at Oklahoma State. That's super exciting. But talk about the type of pressure that a Josh Holliday has back home kind of in a fishbowl, Stillwater, Oklahoma. Everybody knows everything you're doing. He loves OSU. We know all that, so he's having fun with that. But talk about the type of pressure it presents for a Josh Holliday.
Well, the pressure, Casey, probably is part of the job, okay, because the program developed history. Then when Josh came back, there was a 9-year window when you had somebody else running the program, an outsider, Frank Anderson. And Frank did a nice job. Frank didn't do the job that Oklahoma State had grown accustomed to. And that pace that we were on, some guy said to me, every third year to Omaha, it just doesn't cut it with our fans. Well, that same person did not understand that the whole scope of college baseball had become more competitive, that more teams were building towards Omaha, not just Oklahoma State. Well, Josh comes in, he establishes the fact that it's going to happen. He gets to Omaha in 16. He gets the new stadium in, 2020? And so now the 60 to 70-year-old fans think that stadium is going to hit home runs like Pete or, throw fastballs and curveballs and win games for you. And it's not true. I mean, our stadium is beautiful. It's as good as any stadium in the country. Stadiums, palm trees, and cheerleaders don't win ball games. And you know what? Good fans can help win a ball game. Bad fans are a distraction.
Yes.
And expectation is a dangerous word in coaching. If they get to Omaha this year, that's going to be just an expectation of somebody. Somebody out there will find a way to bitch and moan about just getting there and not winning it. Right. That fan needs to stay home. That kind of fan needs to stay home. You're not a real fan. And the guys that live it, that win or lose, they're there. That's what Oklahoma State was built around. And they're out there. When I watch, and I watch it closely, it's cool to think that, this guy's going to turn into Pete Incaviglia. There's not going to be another Pete Incaviglia.
No.
Now, I know you never say never, but leave that one alone. And I don't know that there'll ever be another Robin Ventura. But I got news for you. Guys like Binge and Schubert, they're going to play in the big leagues. So come out and fall in love with them. That's who your future is. But the future of Oklahoma State baseball is solid. And, expectation, if you had to put one word for Josh to deal with, is expectation. And you know what? He deals with it. I mean, he's a lot thicker than I am. Because I'll tell you what, I wouldn't put up with fair weather fans. And you know that. And, if you didn't want to be on my boat, get the hell out. And, Josh is he's a lot different. He'll take a shot at winning that person over before he throws them out of the boat. And so it's a different time and effort. I think that anybody that knows that a kid can, for instance, choose another school over a scholarship plus $10,000 or $15,000. I mean, there was a day when I would beat somebody up if they offered a kid anything. You just turn on that school and try to go get that guy. Well, now it's legal and it's going on. And so you've got to keep up with the Joneses and you got to try to beat the Joneses. So it's a different day and age. Trust me, Casey, it's different.
Yeah. And also, too, to Frank's credit, and after you left and while Frank was here, that was also a period of time where Boone Pickens was donating money and he was building football stadiums. And so to be quite honest with you, me being just a mega fan, right? I mean, I'm just as diehard baseball Oklahoma State as you can possibly get. You talk about those fans that ride or die with it. I'm one of those fans. Hey, baseball for a while, just because Oklahoma State felt like it needed to insert itself in football with the changing landscape of college athletics, baseball just in of itself kind of took a back seat at Oklahoma State. And Josh Holliday, when he came back, ignited that fire again at Oklahoma State, I feel like.
Well, I mean, it was a gamble to bring in an outsider, and Harry Birdwell took that shot, because he was in charge for a period of time. And Frank did what he could do. He didn't know the landscape. He didn't know the people, and he didn't want to know the people.
Yeah.
And so he alienated himself and put himself on the island that Birdwell put him, which was go get it done. It's your program now. Forget about the history of the program. Well, that was an absolute mortal sin, because the program was built on pride, and a lot of the people that had played there wanted to help even after I left. So when you make that statement, you gave a guy a different course that didn't understand what Oklahoma State baseball was.
Right.
Yeah, Mike Holder was wise enough to go out and bring Josh back, and then he helped him because the fans wanted it to come back, and they'd had enough of the other idea, the other concept. It just didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Starting something over that wasn't broken. Quite honestly, you mentioned Boone Pickens. Boone Pickens never went to a baseball game in my life.
Right.
Never did I ever meet him, and I've been there 26 years, and his name came up when I left, and I was like, you know what? If somebody's going to have a little say in something, he should at least come out and be man enough to go face to face. I never even met that guy.
Right.
And, his name was thrown out there that, he wanted to see a change in baseball. All he knew was the football, and that's where he put all his money. So, that little time frame right there was dangerous, and, it backfired. So, Mike Holder saved it, and, people that don't understand that's the importance of good direction, good leadership. Yep. Mike Holder's the best thing that ever happened to Oklahoma State.
Yep, and he gave Josh a dream of one day building a stadium, and then he waited till he actually could do the stadium right. One thing that drives me nuts is you get ahead of things and you kind of just half-ass something out there, and then now you're stuck with that half-ass stadium forever. So Mike Holder waited until he could do the stadium exactly the way Josh Holliday wanted.
Yes, and he didn't nickel and dime it. He went for it. He went and found a guy, took Josh with him, so Josh would be tied up to Mr. O'Brate. And it was a friendly thing. It took a little while longer than what they wanted, but they knew it was coming. And Mike Holder had done it before. What people understand is Mike Holder knew the right people to make things happen at Oklahoma State.
He did.
Right now, the facilities in Oklahoma State are second to nobody. Nobody. And it's because of Mike Holder.
Absolutely. 100%. I would totally agree with that. Okay. So I'm going to make a statement, and I would like to hear kind of how you answer this. When I look at OSU, and I can't really explain this, I like to talk, but I can't explain this, right? When I look at an Oklahoma State player like a Zach Earhart or a Lane Forsythe or somebody like that, and I go, yeah, that's an OSU baseball player. That's what an OSU baseball player should look like. Why do I think that when I see like a Zach Earhart? What exactly defines an Oklahoma State baseball player?
Well, Casey, what happens if you stay the course, if you pick a guy and you bet on him and you stay with him, the program will take on his personality. And when you watch Earhart play, Earhart reminds me a lot of Josh.
Yes.
He has that the shorter guy, the tough guy. Go ahead and hit me. I'm going to go steal a base, or walk me now. I'll hit one out later. A kid that came in here as a second baseman that had to go to the outfield because there was a good second baseman here. That's the head coach's personality coming out. And when you say what took the team so long, if I had to come up with that this year, I would say, why did it take so long to come together? Well, the injuries were the reason. Mm-hmm. But the backup players that had to play put more pressure on players like Binge. It made Binge take off and become a college superstar. And when you think back to the history of the program, we always had an attention seeker. And those kind of guys take the pressure off guys like Forsythe. When I first watched Forsythe, I was like, he's a good add-on, but that's all he is. And then after a couple injuries, he goes from the 9-hole to the 7-hole, from the 7-hole to the 1-hole against left-hand pitching. That's because the guy running the show let that personality come out of that kid. I mean, that kid was beat up when he came in here. You know, mentally, he didn't even know if he wanted to play anymore. And, you know, he'd been on the College World Series team. So to rejuvenate guys, that has to be done on top. And that not giving up until the last out thing, Josh was brought up that way. And his teams played that way. And, you know, you can only have so many stars. And you go back and you think about, you know, he played with a kid named Lamont Matthews one year. Yes. Matthews had one of the best single years in the history of our program, and nobody even knows who Lamont Matthews is or was. And, you know, Josh played with him. Josh was a table setter for that guy. So to understand that sometimes you got to get out of the way and let the star shine. Josh knows that, and he picks that time. But in the meantime, to get there, you got to earn it. I don't think any one guy on the ball club going into fall ball knew exactly where he was going to play, or if he was going to play, or if he was going to be in a lineup, because Josh thrives on competition. And, you know, we've always said that competition brings the best out of a player. And so Josh knows how to put that pressure on. And again, I think that that's what people always, you know, they always assume it's about the position players. But, you know, Casey, honestly, if you can't pitch, you can't win. Absolutely. So, you know, you got to score on Brian Holliday's a bulldog. His personality on the mound, I mean, he's right-handed, which is, you know, 70% of the guys are. He throws 93, can touch 95. 70% of the guys out there can do that. He can curve it, he can slide it, he can throw changeup. That's what separates him. So you bring him in and you get it out of his mind. You're no longer in junior college, but this is just a different uniform. Make the transition. And then all of a sudden you've got that guy on top that says, hey, I'm going to be for the pitching staff what Binge wants to be, what Schubert wants to be. And before you know it, the pressure is spread around, and you got a good ball club. And it's happened, and I think people that have watched this team right now, there's as many people come out to watch Garcia and Brian Holliday pitch as they do Binge and Schubert hit, which is a good thing because they're both good. Those are four really good baseball players.
No doubt. Jordy Mercer, of course, Jake Benz, I still remember the regional that he had. Two-way players I'm talking about. Is Carson Benz the best two-way player that you can remember at Oklahoma State?
Well, I got to go. The only guy close for me was Darren Dilks. And it goes back to the beginning of our time here back in 81. And Dilks was a left-hand pitcher who could pitch, didn't like pitching, wanted to be a first baseman and hit. He couldn't beat me in a foot race, but that didn't matter because he hit it good. He hit it. He had that double home run swing, and so you know he could hit. And then one day he pitched against a guy named Mike Moore, and he realized that Moore's the best arm in the country. I'm not that far off. Well, then he ended up pitching us to the College World Series, and you know guys can do that from midseason on, get hot, and Binge has done that on the mound. The first half of the season, he was being used as a closer, which was good, but that's a one-inning thing. Mm-hmm. But when he went to the mound as a starter, now you see three starters, and it takes three for sure. You better have a fourth guy if you're going to get to Omaha ready to pitch. Well, they've got a lot of different four guys because a lot of guys have been given an opportunity. But the development of the rotation with Binge around him, you know, probably the best two-way guy. I saw Jordy Mercer. Jordy was really good, but ended up being probably more valuable as a shortstop than he did as a pitcher. But I didn't coach Jordy. I mean, I knew all about him. He was coming when I was leaving. And so I saw him when I was in Texas. And on the other side of the field, he's one of those guys you say, why didn't we get that guy? Or why didn't we take that guy? But two-way guys are hard to find. And Binge is a good one. Now, I'll tell you something. McLean was good at that too.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure that the pro baseball world really, really likes that because they still don't know what to do with McLean. I mean, you can be a jack of all and a master of none, or you can be a stud and be a major leaguer. And that's what those kids want when they come to Oklahoma State. So where Binge goes, it's going to be interesting when the draft rolls around.
Yeah, just my opinion, but I put Noel McLean on the mound. I tell him to hit 100 miles an hour, and away we go right there. Okay, kind of on that same theme, talking about Binge and Schubert, where do they rank in 1-2 combos throughout the history of Oklahoma State?
Well, again, the way your mind is, sometimes you get fixated, and my mind is 70 years old now. So the best combo guys when I grew up were Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle.
Yeah.
Then you start looking at it, Roberto Clemente and Willie Stargell. Then you look at it and you start thinking Henry Aaron, and Henry Aaron really never had a guy behind him. Eddie Matthews, but never a real stud guy. When I think about him, I think of Palmeiro and Clark.
Yes.
At Mississippi State. That's probably where my mind goes when I compare the two of them to who in college? Palmeiro and Clark. In the big leagues right now, you know what? Players don't stay together long enough.
Right.
I mean, it's just like they get split up because of free agency. But combination guys are unique, and I mean, it'd be nice. I mean, Ben's got sophomore status. He could come back. But I think he's going to go in the middle of the first round somewhere, and the money's going to be too good, and he's going to have to go for it.
All right, man, tell us what. Of course, it's much more difficult nowadays, but this team, nobody knows it better than you do other than your son Josh and Rob Walton. What does this team have to do to win this weekend at home in regionals, win in supers, and then make it to the College World Series? What has to happen?
I'll tell you this, Casey, and this is a little bit confusing, but when they pick the teams today, when they announce them, they're going to get a 4 seed that I think is going to be bad. Now, I could be wrong. There's a lot of bad 4 seeds in this year's field. Teams that won tournaments by accident. There's Sacred Hearts, Pennsylvania, teams like that. They're going to get a bad one in the first as a 4 seed. They need to beat the 4 seed without using one of those top 3 starters.
Yeah.
And I know everybody's going to say, yeah, but you can't lose first game. Well, you better be able to beat Sacred Hearts and stuff like that with your 4th starter. And they've got plenty. Molsky just walked out and beat OU. Trust me, the 4 seed here is not going to be as good as OU.
Yeah, right.
But you do that, and then you win, because no matter what, then you can load up on game 2 with whichever starter you want. You'll have all 3 of them available. Win or lose, you got another one of them. Win or lose, you got another one of them. And you're going to win with pitching and timely hitting. So, yeah, I mean, home runs are sexy, and everybody loves that bomb song.
Agreed.
But you got to pitch, and you got to keep Kranz healthy, because he's been maybe one of the best closers in Josh's term as the head coach here. And Kranz has turned into money in the bank,
Yes.
But you'd like to be able to blow a game away so you don't have to pitch him every game. So I still say it's going to be pitching and let's just score runs, make it look good, make it look easy. But starting rotation's really good, but I still think it's going to be a fourth starter, and you may want to try to go with him right off the bat. And you may not, because you may not want to put that kind of pressure on, I don't, right now, I don't know if you want to do that to Molsky or Gabe Davis, but they're certainly talented enough to do that. So maybe you wait till the backside and start them later on, but just make sure you've got a fourth starter somewhere in your arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last question for me. I've taken a lot of your time, Tom. I know you're very busy, so this is very gracious of you to come on and talk. This is such an honor to me. I've asked you to put on your dad hat for Josh and the wonderful job he's done. Now I'm going to ask you to put on your granddad hat. Talk about Ethan, who had a really great postseason, a great state tournament for him, and Jackson and Brett Brady and all those guys, and all your grandsons and all you got going there.
Well, I got 4, and 3 are pretty well into it. And the 4th one, he's starting to come around. He's only 10, 11 years old. He's a lefty. He's different, which all lefties are. So we'll talk about Reed later on. I think that Brady is probably the heads up, doesn't miss anything type player that's going to be like Phil Garner, a second baseman that'll grind it. Brady's a really good hitter. For a guy his size to hit the ball and square it up, and I watched maybe half of the high school games, not all of them. He squared the ball up more than any, 8th or 9th grader or whatever he is that I've seen, including Jackson and Ethan. Mm-hmm. I mean, he just hit the ball hard, not far, hard.
I like how you said that, because everybody tells you to hit fly balls. What I tell hitter, just hit the ball hard. I don't care where it goes. Just hit it hard.
Yes, and he's got a good swing, and he's a pretty good runner. he's going to be a second baseman that could probably play short. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Randy Whistler.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe just a little bit better because he's younger. He still has time to grow. Ethan is he's in that big guy stage. He's big. He's like his dad. He reminds me a lot of Matt. Probably doesn't run as well as Matt. But again, he's growing. I hope he stops growing so he can start, developing some of those joints where he can run a little better. But power is off the chart. He's a major league power hitter, and he can really throw. I mean, they got him at shortstop, and the thing that I just watched grow is Ethan's got a really, really good arm. I mean, maybe the best arm of all of them. And, of course, we know Jackson. Jackson's the baseball player that you just look for every day. I mean, just plays the game effortlessly. And Ethan's got to deal with that last name being Holliday. And he's going to have to deal with a senior year in high school that probably will have every team in baseball's front office in here. And he's lucky to have a dad that can prepare him for that. Because that can't just be a dinner time conversation. That's going to be a dinner time, nighttime, on the way to school type thing. Like, just relax, play the game hard, don't look over. There's going to be people everywhere. Type of year for Ethan coming up. Jackson has just got to get his feet back on the ground. What's going on with Baltimore is kind of like a stand back now and watch it, because they picked a guy with the first pick in the draft, and that's an honor. And they got backed up because he had a great first year in the minor leagues, and they kind of ran him through the minor leagues. That was a quick rush.
It was.
And to go to spring training and somebody say, now move over to second base, I don't know that anybody really backed off. They really gave him too much credit for mental toughness. The guy was just turned 20 in January. He got married, he got a dog, and he got a truck, and you take him away from shortstop. And that's where he's been born and raised. And just move him over. No, that's Superman. that's not that easy to do. And everybody just quietly said, oh, he can do that. What's the difference between short and second? Well, I got news for you. You never played the game mentally in your life if you don't think that there's a change when you change positions. I mean, go tell Tom Brady to go from quarterback to tight end.
Yeah.
You're 6'5" and you weigh 220. And watch the reaction you get. Well, that's not Jackson. Jackson did the slide over to second base, and then all of a sudden, and by the way, let's watch you do it in the big leagues, where everybody up there is like, hey, we know who this guy is. We've been hearing about this guy. Well, the whole world did. I've never seen it. I'm not even an internet freak, but I've never seen anything like that. The internet, he's on there. Everything he said, every time he moved was on the internet.
Yeah.
And so he goes to the big leagues and doesn't live up to Superman. And he's back in the minor leagues, getting his feet back under him. And as soon as he gets back on a roll, we'll see. Because right now, Baltimore shortstop might be the best hitting shortstop in baseball. And if Henderson says, I'm not going to third base, then maybe Baltimore's going to have to move Jackson.
Yeah.
I mean, they may have to trade him, because if Jackson hits as a shortstop, you're going to put him back at second base. You only play that game so long. I mean, whether Jackson says one word about being happy at short or not, doesn't matter. His body and his output will tell you, whether he's comfortable or not. And so Jackson's 20 years old. He's probably grown up about 5 years in the last month and a half. And, as soon as the college season's over, I'm going to go find a bag of peanuts and watch Jackson play and just kind of see if I'm right about his mental development, because he's being challenged right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I actually did have one more question for you. I don't mean to bounce around, but I did have one more question for you. Hey, OState Stadium, I know Josh poured his soul into not just building that, getting the funds. You talk about Mike Holder, but also I don't think people realize the time that Josh took going to like Mississippi State and Ole Miss and all these different venues in the SEC and throughout the United States to try to kind of put together the perfect facility for Oklahoma State, which he did. And so Josh had put his soul into this OState Stadium at OSU. So I say that to say, hey, early on, it's been kind of a challenge to figure out what's made it a home field advantage, right? It's like the other team comes in, they're so excited to be there, it's almost worked as a disadvantage at times. So I say that to say it really feels like this year OState Stadium grew up right in front of our eyes.
Casey, I have thought and I have said exactly what you just said. When you come in to an opposing ballpark, opposing team, it's like I was saying last night, it's going to be unfair today when they announce SEC schools being 3 seeds.
Yeah. Because
they're going to go somewhere as a 3 seed, and they're going to intimidate the 1 seed because they're an SEC school. OState Stadium is so nice and friendly that teams come in, first thing they say is that AstroTurf or is it grass?
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable.
They got the best groundskeeper in America.
It's unbelievable.
He's the best. And so they love, immediately they get to play on a beautiful field. Then they look up and they start thinking, you mean to tell me this place could be full when we play? Yeah, it could be if you play Oklahoma State. So they kind of like fall in love with the ambiance of the stadium. And they played better. I thought every team that came in this year played better than the scouting report said they were. And that happens when kids look up and they say, you know what, I went to Utah Tech, but this is what I came to college for, was to play someplace like this. Whether I get my butt kicked or not, I don't care, but I'm going to play my butt off today. Yeah. And they got a lot of that. They got the best performance out of a lot of people in their own ballpark. The people came after them, and it was almost like, guess what, guys? You're going to get attacked because they love playing in this ballpark.
Yes.
So that was a really wise observation on your part, because it's real. And you just watch how fast, as soon as they announce the teams today, watch how fast they come to town.
That's true.
They'll be here early, promise you that.
Yeah. I had a chance actually to briefly communicate with the Texas Tech pitcher that threw on that Saturday night game, Kyle Robinson, who is simply fantastic. And he gave OState like the biggest compliment he possibly could have. And Texas Tech, I mean, their stadium's not new or anything, but it's a good atmosphere. They pack it. And so he's been in front of some great crowds. He just went on and on and on about how awesome that environment at OState was.
Well, when you go back about a month ago, no, about 6 weeks ago, a kid named Tully came in, left-hand pitcher for TCU. And, I mean, he was on fire.
Oklahoma boy?
Yeah, from the first pitch to the last pitch. He went 9 innings. And, I mean, on the last pitch, he was 94. And he hadn't pitched at 94 all year. And there was a really nice crowd. I think we had like 6,800 or something like that. And all I could think of was, this is a result of the environment that's been created by this ballpark. And so, you know what? Just get ready for it. And it'll make the kids, when they come to the program, understand they're going to come after you. And next year, you're going to add 2 of the best storied programs in all of college baseball, in Arizona and Arizona State. And Arizona is getting it back this year. Arizona State's a little down, but I grew up around watching Arizona State. We're adding 2 better baseball schools than the ones that we're losing.
I agree. I've said that a million times. I totally agree with you.
Well, I mean, I got a lot of respect for Texas. I loved my 3 years I worked there. They treated me great. But you know what? Right now, that school wants to be football school again. The same thing goes with OU. I mean, what Skip's done down there is short of a little miracle, okay? Because it's all about football there. And it's going to get worse when they jump into a league into football. You wait till the fall's over. You know, wait till those 2 schools find out about playing football in that league. Well, we're getting 2 baseball schools.
We are.
In Arizona State. And, yeah, we're adding a couple others. But I mean to tell you, getting those 2 people for baseball for this conference, I mean, it's lights out. I mean,
it absolutely is. I wish they'd had Oregon State for that very reason as well. Hey, finish on this, Tom. And every year, I was talking to Chief last week, and this got brought up. Every year, I have to start my baseball season with the Augie Garrido meltdown. And what's beautiful about it is our own very Tom Holliday, our very own Tom Holliday, is the guy in the background by the door that's like, oops, here we go, right? Take us through that rant, what that was like for you. That was awesome.
Well, you know, the background story to that is kind of like, it needs to come out.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to get it out, but I can tell you this. On Monday of that week, he didn't feel good. And we were having a short 45-minute pitcher to hitter workout, and then we were going inside. It was about 90 degrees, and he was holding on to the walls on both sides going back to our office. I was like, Coach, what's the matter with you? He goes, man, I'm really hot. And I said, are you all right? And he goes, no, I'm dizzy. So we got back in there, and he didn't feel good. So I got the trainer. The trainer came. We took him to the hospital, and he just didn't feel good. And Augie was a tough cookie, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
So we got him to the hospital, and they certainly tested him, and they kept him. So about 6:30, you're starting to think, you know, been here about 3 hours. How you feeling? And he still felt the same way. So then I knew something was up, didn't know what it was. I'm not a doctor. And so Kathy and I left about 8:30. And Jeannie was there, and she said, you guys go home. You'll be fine. Well, we didn't know what was wrong even then. And if the doctor that did know, he didn't tell us. He may have told Jeannie and Augie, but he didn't tell us. And we were sitting there. And Tommy Harmon was there with me. But the point was, Augie, he didn't have a heart attack, but he had to have a stent put in and didn't tell anybody. And so Tuesday, he gets out of the hospital at noon, and we played Pan American that night. And the doctor told him to go home and go to bed. He comes walking in the locker room about 4 o'clock, and I was like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "I'm just going to sit right next to you, just like he always jacks around, and I'm going to sit right next to you and just watch you run this game." I said, "Okay, all right, but you better be relaxed," which is impossible to do.
Sure.
So he sat there, and we win 3-2, and it was another right down to the last out win, which we did that year, all the way to Omaha. And so Wednesday, he took that day semi off. Thursday came out, we did pre-weekend practice. Then Friday night, we get beat, I think 2-1 or 3-1. And he goes crazy, but he only did that maybe once a year. But he went crazy, and honestly, when I walked in, I didn't know he was going to go off like that. But I was afraid he's going to have a heart attack, and I was standing behind him to catch him. And I looked over at Tommy, and I was like, "What are we doing here?" And I mean, his points were valid.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was still not healthy. And when you look at him from his chest to his knees, he was black and blue. Mm-hmm. And that's from that surgery. But nobody knew that. And he didn't want anybody to know that. He thought the administration was going to ask him to retire. And so he wasn't ready to do that. And he proved that right. He hung around another 10 years. So anyway, yeah, that was kind of one of those rants that stayed out there forever and ever and ever. But, people need to know that he wasn't even healthy that night. And a lot of people giggle and say, "I can't believe the verbiage, the stuff he said." Well, he was accurate. I mean, he used some profanity, but we all do that. There isn't a coach alive that doesn't do that. So forget about thinking that, coaches are popes. They're not, And so what he said was kind of classical funny, but I mean, the guy was like standing there. I don't even know how he was standing up, but when that was over, I was like, "Are you all right?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm a little bit tired now." He says, "I just let that out." And I said, "Yeah, you did." In fact, I thought he broke his hand when he hit that table, but anyway, that was that I didn't realize that was going to be history.
Yeah, it sure is. Hey, Tom Holliday, again, this has been such a wonderful, wonderful treasure for me. It's been an honor for me to get to talk to you for the second time. You were so kind to come on here. I have taken a lot of your time, so thank you so much for joining OState Daily.
You got it, Casey.